Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. And let's start with today's first story, titled, Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my cheating ex-wife spend her birthday with me and our kids? I, 40s male, was married to Martha, 40s female, for over 16 years. We had two kids together at that time who are now teenagers. Our marriage ended after I learned of Martha's 3-year emotional affair with a man she was talking to online. This was not the only reason our marriage ended, but it explained the problems we'd been having. Martha and this man never met each other in person, and that was mentioned in the hopes I would try to work things out. Yes, they said a lot of things, and she had developed strong feelings for him, but they never met face to face. That was what I heard a lot of. Even without meeting or anything physical, it was way too much. She still cheated and treated me awfully. I couldn't do anything right. She complained I wasn't working hard enough to provide for us, and if I passed up on overtime, she'd give me hell for it. But she'd also complain I was working too many hours. Then she complained when I wanted to go out for date nights and accused me of taking away from time we could spend as a family with our kids or wasting money. Yet she complained when we didn't do something together. Our anniversaries were the worst. For the last two of our marriage, she got mad at me for getting her gifts she loved and wanted. She'd say I was trying to show her up or make her feel guilty for not being as good of a wife as I was a husband. Whenever I spent time with our kids, she accused me of trying to poison them against her or win them to my side. At the time, I had no idea what she was talking about, and I told her. She said kids always have a favorite parent, and I was trying to cement myself as theirs. One day, I asked her what she wanted from me, because nothing I did was right anymore, and she told me I needed to learn when I was wanted and when I wasn't. Because I was acting like a baby who wanted attention when I tried to make a big deal out of date nights. More than once, she called me lazy when I refused to overtime because we had something planned. The kids' birthdays and my birthday were days she did not like me being there. On my birthday the year before our divorce, our kids wanted me to take the day off so we could go to this festival that was in town for that day only, at least that month, and I did. But she hated it. The truth came out when her sister had confronted me over something Martha said, and then I went to confront Martha and she was messaging him when I got there. She confessed and showed me everything. I went through every message and she begged to save our marriage and she apologized for how she'd been treating me. Martha and this man were exchanging I love yous on a daily basis, and she was talking to him at night while we were in bed together, and I was asleep. They wrote out very emotionally intense and graphic sexual situations that they imagined being in with each other. We divorced. Martha tried to fight it, but I told her I would not stay. And now we're a year out from our divorce, and Martha has still not let go. Our kids know about her affair, she confessed to them, and she apologized to them for the way she had treated me, which opened their eyes to some things they never witnessed, and as a result, they don't want a relationship with her, but they are still forced to see her one weekend a month. They do not, however, have to see her on her birthday or theirs or for holidays. Martha's birthday was last weekend, and our kids already had their visit done, so they didn't see her. She wanted me to agree to a family day with the four of us for it, and I refused, and when she pushed, I told her she needed to find her soulmate, what she called her emotional affair partner, and celebrate with him. I told her I had nothing to celebrate about her anymore, and she broke down, and then her sister came for me for being cruel. She told me it was bad enough losing me, and how I wouldn't even try, but she didn't deserve to lose the kids as she did, and my cruelty was wrong when she's still the mother of my children. I feel like I had a very good reason. But maybe I was cruel and it's not justified. Am I the a-hole? I don't blame you. Her fling with her dream man probably didn't work out, and now she's running back to you. The audacity after betraying and belittling you. And next, the second story. My ex, 29 female at the time, cheated on me, 30 male at the time, on my birthday, and it still hurts over 20 years later. Quite a few years ago, I got engaged to a woman I was head over heels in love with. We'd been dating for 2 years, lived together, and our lives seemed to be heading in the same trajectory. I proposed on the 8th of August because the number 8 was my girlfriend's favorite number. All was seemingly good. And as far as I knew, she was as excited at the prospect of marriage as I was. But before I go further, a little backstory. We met almost 3 years earlier through a mutual friend. Let's call him Bob. She was dating at the time. My band was playing with another band that Bob liked, so naturally he dragged his girlfriend along. Bob introduced me to her and said, "You two talk, I've got to go see someone." I thought she was cute, funny, and wondered why she was dating such a transparently awful guy who had a reputation as someone whose only goal in life was to bed as many women as possible. The night ended, and I assumed I'd never see her again, and honestly didn't think too much about our encounter. I didn't even mention her in a diary I kept at the time. She was Bob's girlfriend anyway. She'd probably get tossed to the wayside soon enough and will have been nothing more than a random memory that inexplicably pops into your head when you're doing the dishes 30 years later. If at all. Fast forward a few months later, and I was at a club with some friends, and Bob was there. He came up to me and asked if I remembered his girlfriend. I said I did, and he said that they'd broken up, but were still friends. And she'd come to the club with him and other mutual friends, and she'd love to chat with me. But she was shy, so I should go over to her and initiate things. I put aside my own self-doubt, walked over to her, and struck up conversation. She was drunk but still very sweet, incredibly beautiful, wickedly witty, and quite flirty. We exchanged email addresses and began conversing. Emails turned into phone calls, and after 3 months, I summoned up the courage to ask her out on a date. We shared our first kiss 6 months to the day we first met. We spent the entire weekend together, and I fell head over heels in love. I wasn't to know until much later that she was confused about her feelings and met up with another former boyfriend of hers and slept with him a week after that first kiss. But that's not what this story's about. For the record, it still hurt when I eventually found out, but it didn't devastate me or affect our relationship. Fast forward to 2 years later, August 8th. We'd talked about marriage, and I thought she was utterly in love with me. So I secretly bought the ring she nonchalantly admired as we were randomly passing a jewelry store a few weeks earlier. On August 8th of that year, I proposed. She was shocked, and I assumed it was a good shock. A conversation much later revealed she actually went into a panic and began questioning what it was she wanted out of our relationship. I was oblivious, utterly besotted, and as completely smitten then as I was on our first date. I assumed she felt the same about me. She didn't. Just over a week later, she received a phone call from Bob. His mother had offed herself, and he'd just found her. I drove her to Bob's mom's house and sat in the car while she, and a few university friends of hers and Bob's, comforted him out on the street. I saw the way she hugged him, and it made me feel uneasy. There was warmth there. I dismissed it as her just expressing her empathy, and that I shouldn't read anything into it. After 5 or so minutes of her and the mutual university friends of Bob milling about on the street, with Bob clearly distraught, she came up to me in the car and said I should go home. She'd get a lift back with someone else. As I drove back to our house, I felt like I'd lost something. It was a strange sensation. My fiance's panic and confusion after the proposal clearly made things weird the week following the proposal. She obviously tried to hide it, but I could sense something was amiss. And seeing her hug, Bob deflated me just that little bit more. Bob's mom's funeral was scheduled for the 22nd, my birthday. My fiance had spent vast portions of the week prior helping Bob with funeral plans, cleaning out Bob's mom's house, and generally comforting him. She's a highly empathetic soul, and despite Bob generally being a shitty boyfriend, she and Bob still had a close friendship. So, I understood and assumed it was her just being a good friend. The 22nd came and my fiance arrived home from uni early, got changed, and left for the funeral 15 minutes later. She called me afterwards and said she and a bunch of her uni mates were going to Bob's place for a few drinks. She wouldn't be too long and she'd come home and take me out to dinner or something for my birthday. So I pottered around and enjoyed having the house to myself. 6 p.m. passed, no fiance, 7 p.m., 8 p.m. At around 9 p.m., I figured dinner wasn't happening, so I made myself something to eat and watched a movie. The movie ended, still no fiance. I began getting worried. Midnight passed and I'd spent my birthday alone. At 3 a.m., I called her. I have no idea why I waited so long. She answered the phone and sounded strange, like she'd been asleep, or trying not to let people around her hear her conversation. She said she'd had one too many drinks and couldn't drive home and tried to sleep it off. I told her I could have picked her up. She said she'd be home soon. About half an hour later, she walked through the door, apologized for not doing something for my birthday, jumped in the shower, then went straight to bed. I was so incredibly sad, so incredibly hurt. Almost immediately, her behavior changed. There was a palpable distance between us, and such an awkward reaction from her anytime I attempted to show any affection. I distinctly recall being sad at band rehearsal a few days after the funeral and telling my bandmates something was weird between my fiance and I ever since my birthday. Once again, I dismissed it as just me overthinking things. She'd just been through a turbulent few weeks, and it was bound to affect her mental state. 6 days after my birthday, she woke me up before she headed off to uni. She was in tears. I immediately tried to comfort her and asked her what was wrong. She said Bob kissed her that night, my birthday, and that she had kissed him back. My heart sank. In those brief, hazy moments, I tried to rationalize it. It was effed up, but it was just a kiss. Rationalizing didn't work. I got angry and told her to get the F away from me. She left for uni still in tears. After the anger subsided, a new feeling of hurt I'd never felt before began to overwhelm me. I sobbed like I'd never sobbed before. I'd had my heart broken in the past, but this was so much worse. She kissed him back. We broke up. It was her decision. I wanted to try to work through it. It was just a kiss. Her mind was made up, though. The next month or so was awful. I moved out. She began dating Bob again because she owed it to herself to see if there was something there with Bob. There were angry, hurtful texts, nasty phone calls, and I said and did a lot of things I'm ashamed of. But I felt it was nothing compared to the devastating texts from Bob in return that gleefully targeted my insecurities, which my ex had clearly mentioned to him at some point. But deep down, I knew Bob was a shit guy, and he'd revert back to the same shit guy he was when he and my ex first dated. So I began to let go. Bob would inevitably cheat on her or F her around in some other way. He had a form. A leopard can't change its spots. I moved in with some friends and started enjoying my life. Had some wonderful encounters with great and beautiful people, got a job I absolutely loved, and even started being somewhat of a comfort to my ex when Bob inevitably turned back into the shit bloke he'd always been. Because leopards and spots. My ex saw the change in me and asked if we could meet up for a chat. Sure, I said. She said I probably wouldn't like hearing certain things she wanted to tell me. I was fine, though. I was so much stronger, so much more comfortable with who I was and the future I looked forward to. So we met up at a little park near the first little flat we moved into together. She told me that she slept with Bob that night. I kind of expected that's what she'd tell me, so I thought I was prepared for it. I wasn't. I don't believe in souls, but at that moment I felt whatever manifests itself as a soul physically sink. I put on a brave face and told her it's what I expected to hear. We talked a bit more, hugged, and said our goodbyes. I walked home shattered. I sank into a deep depression, and a few days later, at my lowest ebb, I popped out every tab of paracetamol packet I had, popped them in my mouth, and washed it down with half a bottle of vodka. As the effects began kicking in, probably more so the alcohol than the pills, I began thinking this was a dumb move. I called my sister, who's a nurse, and asked what's the worst that can happen after what I'd just done. She raced over and took me to the hospital. Luckily, I'd vomited most of the stuff out before my sister arrived, so I walked away from the hospital the next morning with a relatively clean bill of health and a referral to see a psychologist. I was still devastated, but I got better. I pushed the hurt aside, again though never actively dealing with it, and began moving on and somewhat enjoying life once more. My ex and I began regularly communicating, and we ended up getting back together. I approached the second phase of our relationship with a lot of trepidation, and recall writing in my diary at the time that I wasn't sure it was a good idea. Knowing that she felt more obligated to see if a second shot with Bob would work, rather than trying to repair the relationship with the man she was engaged to, hung heavily in my mind. I wasn't convinced she was in love with me. I felt like her second choice, the one she settled for. But we forged ahead. I quit my job, the best job I've ever had, which did wonders for my mental health at the time, and we moved interstate for her career. I was in love and wanted to be with her, so it didn't seem that hard a choice to leave our old city behind and try to make a go of another one. We were there for 6 months. Her career wasn't panning out as well as she had hoped, so we began trying for a child. Turns out we're both ridiculously fertile, so she got pregnant straight away. We moved back to our hometown just after I'd been offered another dream job, so we could be around family for our first child. A little over a year later, our son was born. 4 years later, we had a daughter. They were, and still are, our world. Nothing will ever change that. A couple of years after our second child, she became Facebook and Instagram friends with Bob. I expressed how hurtful that was and asked her to defriend him. She told me I was being silly. Essentially, you got the girl, so what are you worried about? But she did eventually, and far more reluctantly than I would have liked. But not before sending Bob a message telling him the unfriending wasn't personal. I was overreacting to their friendship, that she still cared about him, and how he'd always have a place in her heart. Bob's response was far more respectful to my feelings than my partner's. He said he understood and that he'd probably feel the same as me were the tables turned. Side note, it's important to know that I never monitored or pried into my partner's private messages. Not on her laptop, not on her phone, not even a glance at her diary. I implicitly trusted her despite her history, and always felt it was healthy to have safe areas where one could vent frustrations or talk through issues, etc. with trusted friends. On this occasion, I borrowed her laptop for something, and it just so happened to open up on Messenger. I saw a recent message thread with Bob. Curiosity got the better of me. I confronted her about it, and once again, I was made to feel like I overreacted. In hindsight, it was another nail in the ever-increasing ceiling of the coffin that contained our relationship. We fought on, nevertheless, trying to build our lives together as partners and parents. We had many ups and downs, separated a few times, had far too fleeting periods of deep adoration for each other, but ultimately it was never going to work. We began counseling last year, and at a session in February this year, I had a moment of clarity when we were asked who we thought was more into the other person. I answered that I was definitely more into her than she was into me. She agreed without hesitation. My heart sank again, and I realized that that was the case for the majority of our relationship. A few weeks after that session, my partner and I had a chat. She told me that she didn't see a future with me. I'm grateful she did, because I'm far too gutless. I didn't fight it at all. It's been 2 months and it's all still a bit raw. I've moved out and it's given me time, because there's nothing else to do when I get home from work, to reflect on our nearly quarter of a century relationship. I'm still deeply hurt by being cheated on over 20 years ago. To this day, my birthday is the saddest day of the year because it reminds me of the day of Bob's mom's funeral and how lonely I felt. Knowing that my fiancé was in bed with another man that night only exacerbates that loneliness and feeling of worthlessness. And there were so few birthdays after that where she made an effort to make it a special day for me. I should have walked away back then, 20-odd years ago when I was in a better place and not convinced of her love for me. I should never have tried to rekindle what we once had. But I look at our 2 children and hate myself for thinking those thoughts, because she is an amazing mother. And like I said, those 2 kids are our world. I couldn't imagine my life without them in it, and I really am grateful I didn't walk away back then. For them, only them. But given my time again, not knowing the 2 utterly adored kids I share with her would exist, I would walk away. By now, I'd have found love with another, with someone as into me as I am into them. And we probably would have had kids just as adored and amazing as the ones I have now, and I probably wouldn't be regularly reminded of the betrayal that's hung like a cumulonimbus above me for 2 decades. If you've read this far, then boy, you have some stamina. For those of you that have persevered, I just want to say that despite appearances, I am not blameless in the demise of our relationship, and despite the overarching negativity in describing my ex, she is genuinely a good person. I'm sure she'd have things to say about things I did or didn't do that drove a wedge between us, but it's me that's been more hurt by her than she's been by me. Nevertheless, I hope she finds happiness with a new love. I just pray that it's not Bob or a Bob clone, and that I find happiness in a new love long before she does, because it would break me again if she gets there first. And this is how nice pushover guys end up being treated. OP spent a good chunk of his life on his POS wife. I hope he finds the courage to leave her and spend the rest of his life with dignity. Honestly, this is so sad. You can't turn a garden tool into a wife. And now to the update. A few weeks ago, I posted this story. I just got back onto Instagram and was trying to find some old friends to follow. My ex and I have some mutual friends, was only looking for friends from my circle, would never follow her friends. So I went to her followers and I noticed Bob was following her. Naturally, I checked if she was following him back, and yep, she was. My heart sank. It's been 2 months since we separated. I obviously have no idea when she reconnected with him, but either way, it's a stab in the heart. It's like she couldn't wait to end things with me so she could get back in touch with the one guy she knew I had a problem with. Or worse, reconnected with him while we were still together. The guy she slept with on my birthday back in 2003. The guy who was responsible for the darkest hours of my life. The guy she chose over her fiancé because she owed it to herself to see if it could work with Bob. The guy who perpetually made me feel like her second choice. Made me feel like the one she settled for when Bob turned into the same shitbloke he always was. The amount of disrespect and insensitivity she's shown is mind-blowing. The fact she absolutely knows how much this would hurt me indicates she honestly doesn't give a crap about anyone but herself. In my previous post, several people mentioned she wasn't a good person. To you people, you were right. Yeah, screw her. She always loved her F-buddy, she never respected you. Do yourself a favor and focus on getting your life back. Heal up, move on, and get as far away from that train wreck as possible. And with that, we'll wrap up today's story. Dear viewers, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss out. See you next time. Bye-bye.